She said I was the one she'd been praying for. That I gave her life, peace, and stability. I believed her. And because I believed her, I lost everything I had left. I wasn't her future. I was just her fallback plan. Those words echoed in my mind again a few nights ago when I opened an email from one of you. Not from her. Not from anyone tied to the wreckage she left behind. It was from a long-time viewer of this channel, someone who's been quietly following for months. He wrote that these late-night stories gave him the courage to finally face his own. He said he'd been carrying the weight of betrayal for years but never felt safe enough to put it into words until now. Reading his message, I felt a wave of emotions I wasn't ready for. At first, shame, that sting in the gut that whispers, "You should have known better." Then came anger, not at him, but at the cycle itself. How many of us hand over our trust like it's unbreakable, only to watch it shatter in the same way? But as I read further, the anger shifted. His story didn't make me feel small. It made me feel seen. By the time I reached the end, I wasn't angry or ashamed anymore. I was grateful. Grateful he trusted me, and grateful to know these confessions are more than just mine. So before I continue, let me pause here and speak directly to you. If any part of this resonates, if it reminds you of something you've lived through, or something you fear, please like this video, subscribe, and leave a comment. And tell me, where in the world are you watching from tonight? I read every one, and they remind me I'm not just talking into the dark. And for those of you who come back week after week, who sit with me through every heartbreak and confession, I want to give you a super thank you. You've turned my late-night loneliness into connection, and that's something I'll never take for granted. Let me take you back to where it all started. The coffee shop on Thonglor buzzed with an afternoon conversation. But all I could hear was Orathi's voice painting our future in watercolors. After graduation next month, we can start fresh in Chiang Mai, she whispered, her thumb tracing circles on my palm. I'd just sent $3,200 to her Bangkok bank account. Emergency tuition payment, she'd explained, plus funds for a replacement laptop after hers crashed during finals week. You make everything possible for me, Clay. She continued, using that shortened version of Clayton that made my 54-year-old heart skip like I was 25 again. My friends all have boyfriends who promise things but never follow through. But you actually care about my dreams. The way she said it made me feel essential, necessary, like maybe my divorce and business collapse back in Dallas had led me exactly where I needed to be. I've been looking at those houses you sent me, she said, pulling out her phone to show me screenshots. This one has the garden you wanted. Space for your workshop in the back. She'd remembered every detail from our conversations about retirement, about finding peace after chaos. We could be happy there, I said, and meant it completely. We will be happy there, she corrected, kissing my knuckles across the small table. I've never felt so secure with anyone. So loved. Walking back to my apartment that evening, while she headed to her study group, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before my world fell apart. Hope. Real, tangible hope that maybe the best years weren't behind me. She made me believe love was still possible at my age. 14 months earlier, I'd arrived in Bangkok carrying 2 battered suitcases and the weight of complete failure. My HVAC company, 23 years of sweat equity, had evaporated during the pandemic. Not slowly, not with warning, just gone. My ex-wife Jennifer had already claimed her divorce settlement, and my daughter Emma spoke to me in clipped sentences that made it clear she blamed me for abandoning the fight. You could have rebuilt, Dad, she'd said during our last phone call. Instead, you're running away to play retired expat. Maybe she was right, but staying felt impossible. Every street corner in Dallas reminded me of jobs I'd done, success I'd lost, the man I used to be before everything crumbled. Thailand seemed like the only place left where I could disappear without explanation. I rented a studio near Asok, bought a Honda Click, and spent weeks drifting through Bangkok's maze of streets, shopping malls, and coffee shops, feeling invisible in the best possible way. That's when I discovered the expat Facebook groups. Hundreds of Western men buying and selling everything from furniture to motorcycles, complaining about visa runs and Thai bureaucracy, sharing photos of their Thai girlfriends like trophies. I mostly lurked until I saw Orathi's post about handmade phone cases. Beautiful work, intricate Thai patterns combined with modern designs. I bought 3 cases, even though I only needed 1, partly because they were gorgeous, mostly because I had nothing else to do with my money. Her thank you message came an hour later. I'm so grateful for customers like you. Most people scroll past small businesses, but you took time to support someone's dream. That means everything to me. Professional but warm. No flirting, no agenda, just genuine appreciation. We started messaging about Bangkok, about good street food, about the challenge of starting over in a new country. She was 29, studying business administration while running her online shop from a small apartment near Ramkhamhaeng University. I believe hard work always pays off eventually, she told me over our first coffee date at a small cafe near her campus. My mother raised me to be independent, to never rely on anyone else for my success. She insisted on paying for her own drink, asked thoughtful questions about my HVAC background, listened without judgment when I explained why I'd left everything behind. "You're not running away," she said as I walked her to the BTS station afterward. "You're giving yourself space to heal. That's brave, not cowardly." That night, driving home through Bangkok's neon maze, I felt something I hadn't felt since my marriage fell apart. Understood. Like someone actually saw me as more than just another casualty of middle-aged failure. She didn't flirt. She listened. That meant everything to me. Her problems became my purpose, so gradually I never questioned the transition. 6 weeks into dating, Orathi mentioned her mother's diabetes during dinner at a Som Tam cart near Chatuchak Market. "The medication costs keep increasing," she said, checking her phone for the third time that evening. "Mom's trying to ration her insulin, but I'm scared she'll end up back in the hospital." She wasn't asking for help, just sharing the kind of worry that keeps you awake at night. But I could see the stress in her shoulders, hear it in the way her voice got smaller when she talked about money. "How much does she need?" I asked. Orathi shook her head. "No, Clay, I can't let you do that. We've only been dating 2 months. "How much?" I repeated, already reaching for my phone. 18,000 baht for this month's supply. "But I have some saved. I just need to. I'm transferring it now." She cried right there next to the papaya salad vendor, tears mixing with the spicy sauce on her fingers. "You don't understand what this means," she whispered. "My mother worked 3 jobs to put me through high school. She sacrificed everything for my education. I can't let her suffer because I chose university over full-time work." Watching her relief, feeling her gratitude, made me feel useful again. Essential. Like the money I'd saved for a retirement I wasn't sure I wanted anymore could actually accomplish something meaningful. The next month brought her tuition crisis. "I'm mortified to tell you this," she said, staring at her hands instead of meeting my eyes. "But the university is threatening to drop me if I don't pay by Friday. I miscalculated my budget for this semester. Another $1,000 transferred without hesitation. Then her landlord demanded early rent payment before traveling to Europe. "I'll pay you back after graduation," she always promised. "When I get my degree and find a real job, I'll return everything with interest." I always told her not to worry about repayment. When you love someone, you help them navigate their storms. That's what partners do. That's what I told myself every time my bank balance dropped lower. She never demanded anything, never manipulated or guilt-tripped me into helping. She simply shared her struggles with someone she trusted, and I responded the way good men are supposed to respond. With generosity, with solutions, with the kind of support that builds lasting relationships. When you love someone, you help them. That's what I believed. My friends called me a fool, but I wasn't ready to hear truth that contradicted my happiness. Jim Morrison, a retired electrician from Oklahoma who'd been living in Chiang Mai for 8 years, came to Bangkok for his annual visa extension. We'd connected in the expat forums, bonded over similar blue-collar backgrounds and divorce war stories. "I need to meet this girl who's got you writing poetry in the group chat," he said over Chang beers at a rooftop bar in Siloam. I'd been talking about Orathi for months, sharing stories about her intelligence, her independence, her refreshing difference from the stereotypical bar girls that populated most expat dating stories. Orathi joined us after finishing her evening classes, wearing a simple blue dress and speaking fluent English about her business studies, her plans for expanding her online shop, her dreams of eventually opening a physical store. She asked Jim thoughtful questions about his retirement experience, his advice for expats, building long-term lives in Thailand. She was charming without being flirtatious, intelligent without being pretentious, everything I'd described and more. After she left to finish a group project, Jim went quiet, rolling his beer bottle between his palms like he was searching for the right words. "She seems nice," he finally said, but his tone carried reservations I didn't want to acknowledge. But, I pressed, already feeling defensive. But nothing, mate. If she makes you happy, that's what matters. I hear a but in your voice, he sighed. Clay, you're my friend, so I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. How much money have you given her? That's none of your business. It's exactly my business because I care about you. How much? I told him it wasn't like that I was supporting someone I cared about through temporary difficulties, not being conned by some professional scammer. She's educated, Jim. She's got goals, plans for her future. She's not some gold digger looking for a retirement visa. I never said she was. Then what exactly are you saying? He finished his beer before responding. I'm saying 8 years in Thailand teaches you to recognize patterns. And one pattern I've learned is that when something feels too perfect, too easy, it usually is. We argued for another hour. I called him cynical, told him he was projecting his own trust issues onto my relationship. He said he hoped he was wrong but couldn't shake the feeling that I was being played by someone much smarter than both of us. We didn't speak for the next 3 months, and I convinced myself his negativity said more about his failed relationships than my successful one. But his warnings echoed in my head during the weeks that followed, especially when Orathi became harder to reach, less available for the spontaneous dates and long conversations that had defined our early relationship. Sorry, baby. Library closed late, and I just saw your messages. Group project ran until midnight. My phone was on silent. Studying for comprehensive exams. Can we talk tomorrow instead? Always reasonable explanations. Always delivered with apologetic sweetness. But something fundamental had shifted in our dynamic, and I couldn't pretend the change felt natural. I'd already cut people out for her. I wasn't ready to lose her too. Her apartment contained secrets I stumbled upon by accident, not suspicion. I'd planned to surprise her with flowers and her favorite mango sticky rice from the vendor near her university, thinking maybe I could help relieve the stress she'd been carrying about final exams. Tuesday afternoon seemed perfect because her schedule showed a gap between classes, time I could steal for an impromptu visit before her evening study group. The main door to her building was propped open with a brick, residents flowing in and out with the casual familiarity of people who'd lived there for years. I climbed to the 3rd floor, mentally rehearsing my surprise speech about how she didn't have to carry academic pressure alone, how we were a team now. I knocked on her door and heard movement inside, then footsteps approaching. Crap. The voice was male, young, definitely not Orathi. The door opened to reveal a Thai man in his mid-20s, shirtless, hair messy like he'd just rolled out of bed. He looked at me with mild confusion, taking in my Western features, the flowers in my hand, the obvious fact that I wasn't who he'd expected. Sorry, I said in broken Thai, my brain scrambling to make sense of the situation. I'm looking for Orathi. He stared at me for a long moment, then called over his shoulder in rapid Thai. Thai, farang here for you. More footsteps, then Orathi appeared behind him wearing only a towel, her hair wet and hanging loose around her shoulders. When she saw me, her face cycled through surprise, panic, then settled on a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Clay, what are you doing here? I wanted to surprise you, I said, suddenly feeling foolish with my flowers and sticky rice. This is my cousin Niran, she said quickly, gesturing toward the shirtless man. His apartment's hot water broke, so he came here to shower. Niran said something in Thai that sounded like a question. Orathi snapped back at him, also in Thai, her tone sharp with irritation. He's asking if you're staying for dinner, she translated, though his expression suggested he'd asked something entirely different. I should have called first, I said, feeling like an intruder in a situation I couldn't quite decode. No, it's sweet that you wanted to surprise me. But I really need to finish my thesis proposal tonight. Can we do dinner tomorrow instead? That evening, she sent a long text message. I'm sorry if today felt awkward. I know how it must have looked, finding Niran here like that. He really is my cousin. His buildings had water problems for 3 days and he lives nearby. I was just being a good family member, letting him clean up before his job interview. I love that you wanted to surprise me. It shows how much you care, and I need that support during this stressful time. I only want you, Clay. You have to believe me. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But something about the scene replayed in my mind with uncomfortable persistence. The way Niran had looked at me, the sharp exchange in Thai, The fact that she'd never mentioned him before despite talking constantly about her family. I didn't know if she was lying or if I was just paranoid, but I chose to stay. The message that ended everything appeared on her laptop while she showered after the best morning we'd had in weeks. We'd spent hours in bed talking about our upcoming trip to Chiang Mai, looking at rental houses online, planning the life we'd build together after her graduation. "I'm sorry I've been so distant lately," she'd said, running her fingers through my chest hair. "Thesis. Stress makes me crazy, but after I defend next month, everything will be different. Better. We can focus on us again." Her laptop sat open on the kitchen counter, connected to the coffee shop's Wi-Fi downstairs. I wasn't snooping, just walking past when a notification popped up in the corner of the screen. A message from someone named Michael. "Transfer complete. 45,000 baht. When do I see you again? Miss you." I stopped walking, read the message again, clicked on it before rational thought could intervene. The email thread opened to reveal dozens of exchanges, not just with Michael but with David in Australia, Hans in Germany, Robert in Canada, all sending money, all using heart emojis. All talking about missing her, about when they'd see her next, about the future they were planning together. I scrolled through months of transfers, my hands shaking as the pattern became undeniable. For your mother's surgery, for your university fees, for your business expansion, for the security deposit on our apartment. The same stories I'd been told. The same emergencies I'd solved, the same promises of repayment after graduation. But I wasn't her only financial supporter. I was just one name on a very long list. The shower was still running. I closed the laptop and sat down heavily, my heart pounding so loud I was sure she'd hear it over the water. Orathi emerged from the bathroom wrapped in my towel, humming a Thai pop song, completely unaware that her carefully constructed world had just collapsed. "Want to grab lunch?" she asked, checking her phone for messages. "Sure." I managed, though the word felt like sand in my mouth. We went through the motions of a normal afternoon, sharing pad thai and talking about her thesis defense, but inside I was drowning. Every smile, every casual touch, every mention of our future felt like a performance I was no longer qualified to understand. I wasn't her last chance. I was her income stream. I confronted her the next evening with more calm than I felt possible. I cooked dinner, opened wine, maintained normal conversation until we finished eating. Then I set her laptop on the table between us like evidence in a trial neither of us wanted to attend. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steadier than my hands. "About what?" But she was already looking at the laptop, and some kind of recognition flickered across her features. I opened the email thread with Michael. Then David. Then Hans and Robert. "I saw these yesterday," I said simply. "All of them." She didn't deny anything, didn't act surprised or offended or caught off guard. She just sat there studying the screen like she was reading her bank statement. We sat in silence for what felt like an hour but was probably only a minute. Finally, she spoke. "You were never supposed to see that." "Not, I can explain, it's not what you think." Just the simple admission that my discovery had violated the rules of whatever game we'd been playing. "So it's true," I said. "All of them, all of us, we're all supporting you." She nodded once, short and definitive. "How long has this been going on? Does it matter now?" "It matters to me." She sighed like I was asking her to recite multiplication tables. "Michael started 2 years ago. Then David. Then you. Then Hans and Robert joined about 6 months after you. And we all think we're your boyfriend. You are, in different ways. I care about all of you." She said it matter-of-factly, like I was being unreasonable for not understanding the arrangement. "I never forced anyone to send money. You all wanted to help me, so you helped me. I never put a gun to anyone's head." "What about growing old together in Chiang Mai?" "I say a lot of things to a lot of people." The coldness in her voice was more shocking than the revelation itself. "What about your mother's medical bills?" "My mother's fine. She works at a bank in Udon Thani. Your cousin Niran." "Not my cousin." She stood up and reached for her purse. "I'm going home." "I thought this was your home. You've been saying that for months." "No," she said, walking toward the door. "This was just another place I stayed temporarily." I watched her gather her things with mechanical efficiency, no emotion, no regret, like she was checking out of a hotel room. "Did any of it mean anything to you?" I asked. "It meant something, just not what you thought it meant." She paused at the door. I didn't force you to send money, Clay. I never manipulated you or lied about emergencies. You saw a pretty girl with problems, and you wanted to be the hero. You wanted to feel needed and important. That's not my fault. The door closed behind her with a soft click. That was it. No tears, no apologies, no dramatic confrontation. Just a shut door and the echo of brutal honesty I wasn't prepared to hear. No tears, no regret, just a shut door. The other men found each other through shared devastation and mutual Google searches. 2 days after Orathi walked out, I spent hours staring at my ceiling, unable to eat or sleep or process what had happened. Finally, I opened Facebook and searched for Michael Harrison, the Australian whose messages I'd seen. His profile showed a man about my age living in Pattaya, recently divorced, posting photos of beach sunsets and Thai food. I sent him a simple message. I think we need to talk about Orathi. He video called me within 30 minutes. Jesus, mate, he said, and I could see he'd been crying. How long were you with her? 8 months. She told me I was the stability she'd been searching for her whole life. Said we'd get married after she graduated. We compared stories with the grim fascination of accident survivors. The sick mother story. The tuition emergencies. The cousin who wasn't actually her cousin. David joined our call from Sydney, then Hans connected from Munich. Robert never responded to our messages, but we later discovered he'd bought an engagement ring and planned to propose during his next visit to Bangkok. 4 Western men, 4 different countries, all of us believing we were special, all of us funding the same fictional emergencies with real money. The university fees alone, David calculated, we probably paid for her degree 4 times over. Hans had been covering her mother's dialysis treatments for 8 months. I thought I was literally keeping her family alive, he said, his German accent thick with embarrassment. Michael had financed her business expansion twice, including inventory purchases for a physical shop she claimed to be opening. She showed me photos of the merchandise, detailed business plans, everything looked legitimate. Did anyone ever actually meet the mother? I asked. None of us had. She was always too sick for visitors or embarrassed about her condition. Did she ever actually move in with anyone permanently? No. Always 1 more month until graduation, 1 more semester until she could commit fully to the relationship. We weren't her boyfriends. I said, the words tasting bitter. We were her clients. We'd all paid her very, very well for services we didn't understand we were purchasing. She wasn't in love. She was in business. I learned the hardest lesson last, sitting alone by the Mekong River a week after everything collapsed. The water moved steadily toward Cambodia while I tried to make sense of how completely I'd been deceived. But the longer I sat there, watching boats navigate the current, the more I realized deception wasn't the right word. Orathi had never lied about being a struggling student. She was. She'd never claimed to be monogamous. I'd assumed that. She'd never promised to marry me or move to Chiang Mai permanently. I'd heard those promises in words she'd never actually spoken. The real truth was harder to swallow than simple fraud. I'd needed to be her hero more than she'd needed my money. My business failure, my divorce, my estrangement from Emma had left me feeling worthless, purposeless, invisible. Orathi had offered me a role that made me feel essential again. The provider, the protector, the man who could solve problems and make life better. When she'd said I gave her stability, she wasn't lying. My money had stabilized her finances. When she'd called me her rock, she'd been accurate. I'd been a reliable source of support. When she'd said I was different from other men, she'd told the truth. I'd been more generous, more consistent, more emotionally invested than her other clients. But I'd confused being useful with being loved. I'd mistaken financial dependency for romantic attachment. I'd convinced myself that solving her problems would make her need me permanently, that my generosity would transform gratitude into genuine affection. You weren't looking for love, I said aloud to the river. You were looking for purpose. The money hadn't been the real loss. $10,000 was painful, but survivable. The real damage was to my sense of judgment, my ability to trust my own perceptions, my faith in my worth as something beyond what I could provide to others. She didn't just scam my money. She hijacked my hope. Clarity came without closure, and I learned to prefer it that way. I never contacted Orathi again. Never demanded explanations or apologies. Never tried to negotiate the return of money I knew was gone forever. I blocked her number, deleted her social media connections, moved my accounts to a different bank so her name wouldn't appear in my transaction history. 3 weeks later, I packed my life back into 2 suitcases and took a bus to Udon Thani, then a Song Thayu to a small village 40 minutes outside the city. The house I rented had a covered porch, a small garden, and neighbors who spoke no English, which meant no one could ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. I bought a Honda Wave, found a local cafe where the owner's grandmother smiled at me every morning despite our language barrier, and started keeping a journal. Not about Orathi, but about the patterns of thinking that had made me vulnerable to someone who'd played a game I hadn't realized we were playing. I recorded video messages on my phone, never posting them anywhere, just talking to an imaginary audience of men who might be making the same mistakes I'd made. The hardest part isn't losing the money, I said in one recording. It's realizing how desperately you needed to be needed, how much you confused being useful with being worthy. Months passed. I learned basic Thai from my neighbors in exchange for helping them repair motorbikes and fix electrical problems. Turns out losing my business hadn't erased my skills, just my confidence in their value. I slept better, ate better, stopped checking my phone compulsively for messages that would never come. Some mornings I'd sit on my porch with coffee and actually feel something approaching contentment. Not happiness exactly, but peace. The absence of the constant anxiety that had defined my last year in Bangkok. I thought she was my last chance at love. She wasn't. But she was the last time I'd ever give away my worth to be loved. Some lessons cost everything you thought you knew about yourself. But if you survive them, if you actually learn what they're trying to teach you, they're worth every dollar you paid for the education.